Hi, I'm Marjorie. My sister gave me a crib I never asked for, then demanded I either use it or post about it online. But when my baby started reacting to it, and I tried to speak up, the silence from my family was louder than any denial. How did a gift turn into something I was afraid to speak against? Have you ever been pressured to stay quiet just to keep your family looking perfect? The morning light filtered through the linen curtains, soft and golden, like it didn't know yet what kind of day it would become. I sat curled up on the couch in my robe, ivy against my chest, warm and breathing gently. My coffee had gone cold, again, but I didn't mind. The house was still. It was one of those rare moments where nothing hurt. Then the doorbell rang. I opened the door with my shoulder. Lorna stood there, hair freshly blown out, red lipstick already flawless at 9 a.m. She was holding a large, beautifully wrapped box, like something out of a catalog. Her smile was wide, bright enough to blind if I wasn't careful. "This is from all of us," she said, stepping in like she owned the place. "You're welcome in advance." Ivy shifted in my arms, sensing the change in the air. I smiled the way I always did around Lorna. Controlled, practiced, a little too polite. She dropped the box on the floor like it wasn't worth the weight she carried getting it here. Then she scanned the room. Where should I put it so the light hits it well for photos? I didn't answer. She chose the corner by the window. Later, after she left, I stared at the box for a long time. The ribbon was perfect, the handwriting on the tag elegant. To Marjorie and Ivy, with love, Lorna, Mom, and Dad. I already had a crib picked out, one I found online from a small company in Oregon that made theirs by hand. Simple pine wood, breathable paint, nothing fancy, but safe. Real. But now this thing sat in my living room, glossy and gold-trimmed, demanding a place in my home before it ever asked to be wanted. I thought back to the baby shower, how they rolled it out like a prize on a game show. Everyone clapped. My mother teared up. Lorna had insisted I open it last for effect. I remembered the cameras flashing as I peeled back the wrapping, remembered the pressure behind my smile, the applause, and how I'd felt suddenly very small, like a guest in my own motherhood. Now the real gift was here. The next day, Lorna came over again. This time she didn't bring a box, just her phone. "You haven't posted any pictures yet," she said casually, as she scrolled through Instagram. "That crib was expensive." Ivy started fussing in my arms. I rubbed her back in slow circles, trying to quiet us both. Lorna didn't look up. "People are going to think you're ungrateful. At least tag me when you do." I swallowed something bitter. My mother's name popped up on my phone just then, like she was listening. A message preview slid across the top of my screen. "Check this out. Linley's baby looks like royalty in her elite sleeper. Maybe you could too." I didn't open it. I just stared at it. Ivy let out a soft cry. I pulled her closer. I wasn't sure if I was comforting her or if she was the one keeping me upright. It started with a sound I didn't recognize. A kind of shuffle mixed with a whimper, so soft it barely registered over the hum of the monitor. Ivy was never a quiet sleeper, but this was different. I found her twisted slightly to one side, her face flushed. A faint rash was blooming across her cheek, the kind that doesn't look serious until you know what came before it. I scooped her up without thinking, holding her against my shoulder. Her skin was warm, not feverish, but unsettled. I carried her back to the bassinet in my room, laid her down gently, and waited. 5 minutes passed. The red began to fade. Her breathing slowed. She sighed, the way only babies do when their bodies decide it's safe to rest again. I didn't sleep after that. The crib sat in the corner, glowing in the moonlight like a throne I never asked for. I looked at it and thought, not for the first time, what if beauty is the mask danger wears when it wants to be invited in? The next morning, I did it again. I needed to be sure. Maybe it was just a fluke, a bad burp, or something she touched. I wiped everything down, washed my hands twice. Then I placed her in the crib again, gently, slowly, my heart loud in my chest. 3 minutes later, she started coughing, short, sharp gasps. Her fingers clawed at her onesie. Her legs kicked out in panic. I grabbed her so fast I almost dropped my phone trying to call the pediatrician. They fit us in that afternoon. I held Ivy on my lap as Dr. Jonas pressed his stethoscope to her chest, his face calm in the way doctors are trained to be. He took swabs, notes, and a few quiet breaths before finally saying, "Hard to say definitively. Could be seasonal, or maybe sensitivity to material, possibly environmental." I nodded, though I didn't feel reassured. "Let's observe for now," he added, kindly, but vaguely. "Track the episodes. Keep her away from the crib for the next few nights. See what changes." As if I hadn't already done that. Back at home, the afternoon light hit the crib just right. Gold paint shimmered like it was proud of itself. I stood in the doorway with Ivy asleep in my arms, her breath finally steady. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt alone. A buzz on my phone snapped me out of it. A message from Lorna, bright and smug. "Still no post? People are asking." I didn't answer. I just stared at Ivy and wondered how long it would take for a mother to stop doubting what she knew in her bones. Dinner that night was quiet in the way that feels loud. The clink of forks against plates, the soft hiss of the radiator kicking on, Ivy's monitor blinking silently on the counter. Clinton chewed slowly, reading something on his phone, while I pushed a piece of roasted carrot across my plate. "Ivy had another reaction," I said, not looking up. "Same as before. I put her in the crib for less than 10 minutes. He set his fork down, not hard, but not softly either. "I'm sure it's just a coincidence, Marge. Maybe she's sensitive to something in the air. Pollen's been bad lately." His voice was calm, like a doctor delivering a diagnosis he didn't quite believe in. I nodded once, mostly to keep from crying. The silence that followed was padded with weather talk. How the wind had picked up, how early fall had arrived too soon. Neither of us mentioned the crib again. The next morning, Clinton left early for work, said he had back-to-back calls. I stayed in pajamas longer than I should have. Ivy was fussy, but I held her close, humming out of tune, our rhythm steadier than anything in the house. By noon, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find his mother standing there, smiling tightly, holding a foil-covered pie dish. "I just thought I'd stop by. Clint said you've been overwhelmed lately. Figured you could use a hand. Or maybe just someone to help you put things in perspective." I stepped aside because that's what I was taught to do. She walked in, her perfume trailing behind like a statement. She looked around the living room, taking in the scattered toys, the burp cloth draped over the couch. "Looks like you've got your hands full," she said like it was a compliment. I smiled without showing teeth. We sat in the kitchen. She talked about her bridge group, the new curtains she'd ordered, how her neighbor's daughter just had a baby and went right back to work after 6 weeks. Can you imagine? Some women just bounce right back. Ivy started crying upstairs. I stood. "Excuse me." In the laundry room, I found myself folding the same onesie I'd folded yesterday. It was already clean, already put away. I folded it again anyway. I stared at the basket, the wall, the hum of the dryer. I thought about how a house could feel so full and yet so uninhabited. My phone buzzed. A family group chat. I tapped it open. A photo from Lorna. The crib, perfectly styled with a plush blanket, soft lighting, and a caption. "It's the little luxuries that show how much we care." I didn't respond. I didn't cry. I just closed the phone, picked up the onesie, and folded it one more time. It was the kind of gray afternoon that settled into your bones. I hadn't changed out of my house sweater, the one with sleeves too long and elbows thinned from years of leaning. Ivy was asleep, finally, after a restless morning. The living room smelled faintly of formula and lavender wipes. I just put the kettle on when the doorbell rang. I knew before opening who it was. My mother stood on the porch, umbrella tucked under her arm like she'd brought it more for show than necessity. Her lips smiled, but her eyes took inventory the moment they met mine. I stepped aside. She walked in like the house still belonged to her. "Just thought I'd drop by," she said, already scanning the space. "Didn't want to bother calling ahead?" I moved to the kitchen, started making tea out of muscle memory. She followed. "Back then," she said, her voice soft in the way only judgment can be, "we didn't have fancy cribs or all this organic nonsense. And look, you turned out just fine." I held the mug tighter. She didn't know that her idea of fine came with years of therapy and a voice that still trembled when challenged. She stirred her tea like it had done something wrong. You worry too much, she added. Always have. Maybe take a step back. Breathe a little. Upstairs, Ivy began to fuss. My mother sipped her tea. I stood. I'll get her. I didn't wait for permission to leave my own kitchen. In the nursery, I didn't pick Ivy up right away. I just sat beside her crib and listened to her breathing. Soft, uneven, real. I pressed a hand gently on her chest, needed to feel something grounded. The next day, I ran into Helen from down the street in the grocery store parking lot. She smiled the way people do when they've heard something they think they shouldn't mention but will anyway. Just wanted to check in, she said, squeezing my arm. Your mom said you've been having a tough time. Postpartum blues, huh? That can sneak up on anyone. I nodded because saying anything else would have meant explaining everything. I nodded and smiled and got into the car before the eggs could roll off the back seat. And then I screamed. Into the steering wheel, into the half-cracked windshield, into nothing. That night, after Ivy fell asleep curled against my chest, I checked my phone. Clinton had forwarded a message from his sister's group chat. His mother had replied to it. She's always been dramatic, she wrote. Poor Clint. I set the phone down without locking the screen. It dimmed slowly on its own, fading the way people do when you stop defending them. I looked down at Ivy's fingers curled into my shirt and whispered, They want me to disappear quietly. But I wasn't going anywhere. It came while I was folding a blanket I didn't remember washing. Ivy had just gone down for the night, and the house was still in that temporary hush parents know too well. The kind where every creak feels like a potential undoing. The laundry basket beside me overflowed with tiny things, socks, onesies, burp cloths with faded giraffes. My phone buzzed. A notification from the neighborhood mom group lit up the screen. I clicked without thinking. Feeling blessed, some people forget what generosity looks like. Attached was a photo from my baby shower, the one with the crib front and center, like it was the star of the day. I was in it too, mid-laugh, holding the ribbon while everyone clapped. But I remembered the moment differently. The pressure to smile, the weight of expectation wrapped in gold paint and Instagram filters. The post was from Lorna. The comments were worse. So elegant. You always know how to make things special. That crib is stunning. Lucky baby. Heart emojis lined the screen. I felt nauseous. Did they know I was the one in the photo? Did they know my baby couldn't breathe in that thing? I dropped the phone face down and folded the blanket again. Slowly, deliberately, as if doing it with more care would undo what I'd just seen. The next morning, Lorna showed up unannounced. She didn't ring the doorbell this time, just knocked lightly and stepped in like she'd been invited. She carried something large under one arm, wrapped in brown paper. Ivy started fussing as soon as she heard the door, her cry thin and immediate. I brought you something, Lorna said brightly, revealing a massive canvas print of the same photo she'd posted. Glossy, stretched over a wooden frame. Thought you might want something nice for that wall? This is family. Before I could answer, she walked into the living room and hung it herself. Right above the couch, right where I sit when feeding Ivy, right where I rest when the world's noise becomes too much. Clinton walked in midway through. He gave me a look, like maybe he wanted to say something, but he didn't. I stood there holding Ivy, whose little hands clutched at my collar. My mouth was dry. Later that night, after Lorna left and Clinton went upstairs, I stood in front of the photo. It was beautiful. The kind of stage beauty that makes people doubt their own homes, their own memories. I looked at my own smile in the photo, too wide, too rehearsed. Ivy was in my arms even then, her eyes closed. The crib gleamed behind us like a throne. I whispered to the canvas, not even loud enough to wake the baby. If you cross the line again, I won't be silent. My phone buzzed from the kitchen table. I walked over, picked it up. A message from Nina. Still want me to introduce you to the journalist? Nina's kitchen smelled like cinnamon and burnt toast, though no one had made either. The window above the sink was cracked open, letting in a cold wind that made the papers on the table shiver. Lydia Stroud sat across from me, sleeves rolled up, dark hair tucked behind one ear, her voice calm and deliberate. She pointed to a printed document. They're labeling these cribs as decorative furniture. That's how they bypass infant safety regulations. I looked down at the line she underlined. Decorative. My hand trembled as I reached for the next sheet. Photos of the warehouse overseas. A supplier in China flagged twice for using industrial adhesives with formaldehyde. I didn't need to read the fine print. I could smell that glue when I opened the box. I could see it in Ivy's flushed skin, hear it in the cough she couldn't explain. Lydia kept going. We're not just talking about gray ethics. This is criminal negligence hidden under velvet bows and social media campaigns. I thought of the mothers on Lorna's page, the ones who commented heart emojis and fire emojis on every post. I wondered how many of them had babies like mine, who coughed, cried, and never got answers. You're not the first to bring this to me, Lydia said, softer now. A blogger out of Portland tried last year, wrote a 4-part series about chemical traces, got a cease and desist letter within 3 days. My eyes narrowed. She took the posts down. She deleted her entire blog. Every platform went silent. I tried to contact her. No response. A long pause settled between us. I think they paid her off, she added, or scared her into silence. Either way, they buried it. I didn't flinch. I just folded the last page carefully and laid it on top of the stack. The air in the room felt heavier, more solid, like it had chosen a side. They want fear to speak louder than truth, I said quietly. Not this time. When I stepped outside, the sky had changed. The kind of gray that didn't promise rain, just reminded you that light was optional. I walked to the car without speaking. Ivy was with Clinton at home. I imagined her face resting against his chest, breathing safe. In the car, I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder. My thumb hovered for only a second before I pressed record. To Lydia, I said, this is Marjorie Dean. If anything happens, if I go quiet or vanish from online spaces, please know this wasn't paranoia. This was motherhood. This was protection. I hit stop, then send. That night, I put Ivy down in the bassinet and walked into the garage. The crib was still there, disassembled, parts stacked against the wall like bones left to dry. I pulled on gloves, grabbed a Ziploc bag, and started taking samples, sanding a corner of the headboard, scraping glue residue from under the rails. Every piece I bagged felt like a page of a story no one wanted to read. Under my breath, I whispered, this time, I'm choosing my child over their comfort. And I meant it. The folding chairs creaked under the weight of hesitant postures. Name tags clung awkwardly to cardigans. Coffee sat untouched in compostable cups. The room smelled faintly of printer paper and nerves. I stood near the back at first, clutching my purse tighter than I meant to. Inside was the piece of wood I had scraped from the crib, the one that made Ivy wheeze, that no doctor could name, that no family member wanted to acknowledge. My fingers brushed over the Ziploc through the lining of my bag. It felt heavier than it should have, like it carried everything no one else would carry for me. Nina opened the workshop with her usual warmth, thanking the local center, introducing Lydia with a nod of respect. Lydia stood by the projector, sharp-eyed, confident, all evidence and no apology. My name was next on the agenda. I stepped forward. Some people recognized me. A few gave polite smiles, the kind that say, she's trying her best. Others looked at me like they were still deciding. This isn't about brands, I began, my voice clear despite the lump in my throat. It's about what we're told to ignore for the sake of politeness, for the sake of being easy to live with. No one moved. A few heads tilted. I kept going. I bought this crib, or rather, I was given it. A gift, they said. Something beautiful. Something safe. I held up the bag. The wood inside looked ordinary, plain, not dangerous. That was the point. This made my daughter cough, break out in rashes. It made her sleep less, breathe harder. It made me question every instinct I had. I looked at the room, at the other mothers with their cautious eyes and shifting knees. And still, I was told to smile, to post a thank you. To act like a baby gasping for air was just seasonal. Lydia stepped in then, clicking to the next slide. Charts, labels, red ink highlighting banned chemicals, factory photos, paper trails. I heard someone whisper formaldehyde, and another person mutter, I think I saw that brand on Lorna's feed. The silence cracked. Then applause, hesitant, then growing, filling the room with something I hadn't felt in weeks. Validation. But it didn't last. A voice, sharp and uninvited, cut through from the back. Are you sure this isn't just about your sister? The room hushed again. I turned. A woman in expensive yoga gear crossed her arms. Sounds like a personal vendetta wrapped in activism. I met her eyes. She didn't blink. I didn't look away. My sister, I said, voice steady, asked me to smile through silence. My mother asked me to forget my instincts. My family asked me to perform gratitude while my child's lungs fought for air. I took a step forward. If that's personal, maybe it's time personal became public. No one clapped this time, but no one interrupted either, and I felt something shift, not in the room, but in me. The call came just after the dishwasher hummed to life. Ivy was upstairs asleep, the hallway dim, the kitchen warm in the orange light of early evening. I heard Clinton's voice before I heard hers. He answered with that gentle tone he reserved for customer service reps and family, the one that made it sound like he was listening, even when he wasn't. Yes, she's just been overwhelmed lately, he said. No, I understand. I'll talk to her. I stayed in the hallway, sock feet on hardwood, holding my breath. Gretchen's voice was clear through the speaker, sweet, coated in that manufactured concern she'd perfected over the years. We know she's upset. Maybe you can help smooth it out. Remind her this is all coming from a good place. He glanced over his shoulder and saw me standing there, said nothing, and neither did I. I turned around and walked away, my chest pulling tighter with each step. By the time I made it to the living room, I could barely hear the dishwasher anymore. Later that night, after the house had gone quiet and the shadows settled into their corners, I sat on the edge of the couch, scrolling mindlessly. Then I saw it. Lorna's post. A photo of her holding Ivy in the nursery, one taken months ago before everything cracked. The lighting was perfect. Ivy looked peaceful. The caption read, "Family means doing what's right, even when others don't see it." The comments came in fast. "You're amazing. Such a beautiful bond. She's lucky to have you." And then, one that stopped my breath. Wasn't this the crib brand under investigation? I watched the typing bubble flicker. Lorna replied, "Don't believe everything you read." No tag, no mention of me, just a casual erasure, like I'd never been part of the story. I stood up and walked to Ivy's room. The nightlight cast a soft halo across her blanket. She stirred once, then settled, fingers curled loosely near her chin. I sat beside her, phone still in hand. I opened the voice memo app, pressed record. My voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. "To my mother, to my sister," I said. "This is the last time I'll pretend your silence is love." I let the silence hang, then hit send. I opened my email, attached the recording, addressed it to Lydia. Then I sat there in the low light, watching my daughter sleep. And for the first time, I didn't feel like the quiet one. The house was quiet again. The kind of quiet that didn't scream or ache, just existed. Ivy's nursery was dimly lit by a warm lamp in the corner. Her tiny chest rose and fell under a soft muslin blanket, her fingers twitching in sleep, clutching the edge of a small, worn, stuffed bear. Marjorie stood beside the crib, watching her daughter's face, memorizing the curve of her lashes, the peace there. This crib wasn't a gift. It wasn't part of someone else's performance or agenda. It was safe, chosen, bought by her, for her child. She reached for the last blanket in the laundry basket, folding it slowly, then laying it over the rocking chair's arm. Her breath eased as she stepped back, arms crossed loosely over her chest. Maybe peace isn't loud. Maybe it's just still. Outside the room, the hallway felt a little colder. A single framed photo still hung, the baby shower snapshot Lorna had insisted on printing. The one with the curated smiles and sugar pink bows, and the way Marjorie's eyes had looked so tired, even back then. She stood there for a moment, then gently lifted it from the nail. Down the hall, Clinton appeared with a roll of painter's tape in one hand and a small frame in the other. "I found this in Ivy's art bin," he said quietly. A chaotic mess of crayon swirls, overlapping like confused weather. It had no logic, no real shape. But it had color. Marjorie took it, smiled faintly, and hung it in the empty spot. Neither of them said anything else. Later, she opened the linen closet, reaching behind the stacked towels to a shoebox. Inside it was the final piece of the elite sleeper crib, a splintered slat, saved after the recall, after the truth, after the lies. She didn't bury it deep, just placed it in a new box labeled Evidence and slid it onto the top shelf. Not hidden, but not reachable either. Clinton passed behind her with a folded laundry basket. He gave her shoulder a brief, wordless squeeze as he moved down the hall. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't asking for anything. It was just presence. That night, the world responded, or tried to. Lorna posted a filtered shot of her holding a cup of tea, her expression soft. The caption read, "Sometimes we overstep when we care too much." The comments were supportive mostly. One asked if everything was okay between the sisters. She didn't reply. Gretchen's voice came through a voicemail, slightly rushed but controlled. "Your father says you were brave. I suppose that matters, anyway." Marjorie listened once, then set the phone down on the counter and walked away. She didn't save it. Didn't delete it. Somewhere between silence and response, she'd learned that not everything needed an answer. The next morning, the porch was cool beneath her bare feet. The mug in her hands radiated heat through her fingers. She stood in her oversized sweater, hair still tousled, and stared at the wide, pale sky. She wasn't looking for a sign, or a resolution, or even forgiveness. She just liked how open it was. They may never say sorry, and I may never ask again, but I'm not waiting anymore. But I'm not angry either. Just done. Maybe healing doesn't come in the form of apologies. Maybe it comes when you stop waiting for them. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Silence can look like kindness, and guilt can dress itself up as tradition. But your instincts matter. Your voice matters. And choosing peace for your child, even when it costs you comfort, is the bravest kind of love. I used to think boundaries would break my family, but all they did was show me who was really standing with me when it mattered most. What about you? Have you ever stayed quiet for the sake of keeping the peace? Was it worth it? If this story touched you or made you reflect on your own journey, leave a comment with a 1 inch or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't land for you, I'd love to know why. Share your perspective. Let's talk. And hey, if you want more stories like this, the kind that make you feel seen, understood, or even just a little less alone, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one.